Welcome everyone to our final session for the 16th Annual Growing Online Learning Conference presented by Illinois Community Colleges Online. The theme for this conference has been AI, Transforming Education for Tomorrow. We hope that these sessions have helped you with ideas and strategies for engaging students with effective use of artificial intelligence. I'm Jeff Newell. Thank you for being here today. ILCO would like to thank Heartland Community College for providing the web conferencing platform. Please note the captioning is available. Recordings of these presentations and handouts will be available at the conference site on ilco.net following the conference. If you have any questions on accessing the recordings, please feel free to contact me at jeff.newell@illinois.gov. At this time, I'd like to introduce our panel. We have our panel discussion this afternoon, Artificial Intelligence and Academic Integrity Policy. With us here today is Donovan Breaux, Chair of the English Department and Distinguished Professor of English at Oakton College. Justin Hoshaw, Online Learning Coordinator and Associate Professor of Biology at Waubonsee Community College. James Hutchings, Associate Dean of Humanities and Fine Arts and Assistant Professor for Music at Carl Sandburg College. And Laura Lawson Collins, Professor of Psychology at Moraine Valley Community College. Thank you to the four of you for being willing to participate on this panel. To set the stage for a discussion, I want to just kick this off by asking, do you think your institution is seeing AI in education as a positive or a negative thing?
Sure, I can go first. It depends on who you ask, I think would probably be the best way to describe it. So I don't think I can tell you an in general response. I know that several people in our computer science department are using the large language model artificial intelligence to help with coding. I'm not sure how that works. I have no idea how to code. But I do know that particularly in the humanities, there are some very negative responses to it. One of my colleagues in philosophy has likened it to automation of physical work and thinks that the artificial intelligence automating intellectual work will herald the death of human thought. So I'll just leave it at that.
It sounds like it's more doomsday for your folks than it is for mine. I mean, our writing teachers are not super stoked about its existence, but I feel like as a population, we're a little more embracing of its possibilities. That said, I mean, it's kind of a monster we don't yet have control of. And sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes it's icky. So we have mixed feelings. We have mixed feelings at our campus.
Yeah, it's definitely mixed for us as well, for sure. And I think some of the same themes that I've heard from our other panelists are true at Moraine as well. I think especially comm teachers are having a hard time figuring out how to manage. And I feel like oftentimes the concerns that I hear from comm are really, really just focused on catching AI as opposed to ever kind of using it themselves or seeing it as a tool. And I think for the rest of the faculty, it's mixed. You know, there are some people who are excited about it, and there are some people who are horrified by it, and there are some people who are seeing it as a fad and are just hoping that it will go away. So that's kind of where we're at.
And the same story at Waubonsee as well. We are definitely mixed. And it's interesting, I think, coming out of COVID, because a lot of instructors moved their exam material to be more essay-based questions and less multiple choice questions. And then coming out of that, we're hit with AI. And now it's like, oh, essay questions are no longer okay either. Where do you go from here? So a lot of confusion and just people being unsure where to go and how much time to invest in a new method, because maybe it will only work for a year or less. So I think it's interesting. I'm working with a couple local high schools, and they surveyed their faculty and found that you had 60% of the faculty there were for AI, and 40% had negative, fearful feelings of it. So it's not just at the college or the university level, it's also at these other levels as well who are dealing with this question as well.
It certainly does seem in some ways startling when you look at what AI can do, and then just thinking about how that affects how we teach. And I've been fascinated to see how from our couple of faculty presenters that were with us, seeing how they're modeling effective usage, and I mean, not just using it as a tool with students, but actually modeling effective usage. But so moving a little bit down the road on just thinking of that, though, is what do you see as the primary academic integrity concerns related to AI?
I'll jump in there first. I think for our faculty, I think their number one concern is producing writing and then just copying and pasting the writing. And along with that, you know, there's a concern that original thought and critical analysis and critical thinking, that all of that is going to go out the window. That will be creating individuals who are dependent on technology and not able to think through problems on their own. So I think that there are a lot of issues with academic integrity, but that at our college, I think that is the one that folks are most focused on.
Yeah, I'd have to give a big ditto to that one. It's not necessarily the concern that it's making plagiarism sort of easier, right? It's always been fairly easy to plagiarize. It's just that it's making it so that students don't actually have to put any effort into the actual act of plagiarism, right? I know it sounds a little weird, but if you had to look up a couple of different internet articles and copy and paste and do patch writing from a couple of different sources to put together a plagiarized paper, that's actually a little bit more work than just typing in a prompt into an AI generator. So basically, our main concern is that we're going to generate writing prompts. Students will feed those prompts into the text generator, and they'll just spit out an assignment, right? That they won't even bother thinking about it, even to the extent of having to do a simple internet search.
I was just going to say ditto also. I think, Laura, you really hit the nail on the head there. That's often the concern that comes up when I'm talking with faculty, is worrying about that copying and pasting. And if that's all students are doing, yeah, they're not critically thinking. So so even the faculty that are for AI are still struggling with, okay, how do we have students use this tool, but still encourage and grow the students' critical thinking skills?
I agree. I think we're seeing the same things. The overarching concerns are the same. I mean, it's very like Rise of the Machines. For us, we know this. Like, can we survive past this and still have creative thought? But our discourse is much more around being able to identify and teach through it. Like, if we do we have reliable ways to see how students are using AI? And when we do have those reliable ways, can we then use those opportunities to teach? Most of our discussion is more around that, while also being mindful of all of these other things that we've brought up. Absolutely.
And to that, I would like to add, I just started a pilot program in Canvas using the app Priya by Praxis. And that company allows me to embed a ChatGPT-like search engine into my Canvas course, and I can then look and review the search histories that students submit, or the questions or prompts that students submit there. So I'm really interested to use that because it allows me to see what students are struggling with. And I think if more faculty have tools like that, then it's less fearful about, okay, what are they getting out? Are they just copying and pasting? Because that's easy to check then. And the draw for students to use this versus just ChatGPT is that this is taking information from only trusted sources. So the idea is there's less hallucination going on, and students get better citations from information as well.
My next question is, generally, where are the academic integrity concerns coming from your institution? And you've spoken already about some discipline areas and some faculty perspectives, but is there something to add there? And I'm curious, is this something that administrators or other staff at institutions are discussing as well, and some perspectives you can bring there? I stumped everybody.
Yeah, no, I was waiting for someone else to go first. I think that there's there is a big concern about the accuracy of detectors. You know, when OpenAI pulled their own detector, I know for me personally that was worrying, that if the company that produced ChatGPT cannot accurately identify ChatGPT produced content, then that does make you question the other tools that are out there. So I know that there's been debate over whether to use the AI detection tool with Turnitin, connected to Turnitin. Right now, we are not using that tool. We used it as long as it was free. But with, our faculty, we did a survey with our faculty, and, they were not convinced that it was reliable. And do we want to pay a lot of money for a tool that may or may not be reliable, and may also disenfranchise people who are accused of using AI when in fact they didn't use AI? We know that there are a lot of false negatives, and there are some false positives. And as long as we have some false positives, and we have maybe some instructors who may not understand that they can generate false positives, that it's not the same as just a Turnitin plagiarism checker where they're looking for exact wording. That can be problematic. So that's I know for us, the accuracy of AI detectors and trying to find one that is reliable, it has been difficult. And then what to do with that information as well, it is difficult too. Because if you are not 100% guaranteed that this is reliable, well, then, if a student says I didn't use it, it can be difficult to say, well, this is my evidence when we know that there are false positives.
And that's the same case at Waubonsie. The number one issue for academic integrity right now is faculty suspecting students of using AI generated work. So I thought that was surprising because I'd never heard that until recently before. And it's to the point where it's become that much of an issue at the college. I was shocked. But I think also, so we've talked about staff and therefore administrators and student conduct. There's also concerns with our technology staff about adopting new AI technology and what specifically what student information is being shared, what's happening with that information. So we have to look at that side as well.
Yeah, and I guess we're kind of drifting away from academic integrity concerns to other concerns. Well, I'm going to drift away. One of the things that we're also concerned with is the possibility for learning management systems to be used to train artificial intelligence teachers. Harrison, I think it's Harrison Middleton. I don't want to impugn a school. There is a school, I will put it out there, that has already used the student papers and feedback on student papers to train an AI model to basically take my job, right? To be a composition instructor. And so what we're concerned with is that our work, our labor, and the students' work, their intellectual labor, is going to be used by an outside company. We use D2L as our learning management system, and on their, buried deep down in terms and conditions, everything that's put into D2L becomes the property of D2L to do with what they want. And so if they decide they want to train an artificial intelligence to replace instructors, I've got no way to stop them from using my labor to train an AI to replace me.
I'm absorbing that. That's
yeah, rise of the machines, right?
Yeah, yeah. Although, as we learned from our keynote, AI hallucinates, and that's something they did not address in Terminator. All right. So let me ask, so a lot of institutions have been reviewing AI in their academic integrity policy, and I'm wondering what has been the process at your institutions in trying to address AI with your academic integrity policy?
Yeah, we've kind of actually I can show you if I can let me get my screen sharing thing on here. We have basically folded an AI policy into our currently existing academic integrity statement. So this is not for the college. This is only for the English department at Oakton. And oh, I can't make the text any bigger, sorry. Uh, Basically we've prefaced it right by saying that the use of artificial intelligence does present serious ethical, social, and educational consequences. We will consider any text or image generated by artificial intelligence and submitted by students as their own work and without proper attribution to be a violation of academic integrity, the same as a case of plagiarism. So this includes work that is 100% AI generated, and also tools that are written for clarity and conciseness or stylistic changes, right? And we can talk about that when we get to the AI detector thing. But yeah, we basically, in the English department at least, folded it into our currently existing academic integrity statement, so that way it has the same sanctions.
I just uploaded our college policy. We just put this into place a few weeks ago. So we put together a VIDI on AI at the college and put together, worked on several statements, sent them out to different department meetings, received feedback from those departments, worked on the statement a little bit more, and then sent it out right before classes began this semester. My guess, and I don't know this for sure, but my guess is that this is the initial stab at this policy. It's very broad, and the idea was to make it flexible enough for instructors who would like to use AI in the classroom, while still allowing it to serve some guardrails. And ours is also embedded in the academic integrity policy as well. So for us too, if a student is found to have violated the policy, it goes through the regular academic integrity sequence.
Earlier in one of the other sessions this week, I learned, which I did not know yet, that the APA style guide and MLA now have a way to cite generative AI content. How does that fit into all of this? That's just mind-boggling.
Well, I can tell you that for us, it's going to depend on the individual instructor and potentially the individual department as to what their policy is. So, you could have a very restrictive policy that an instructor decides upon, in which case even APA style cited or MLA style cited AI generative content would not be acceptable. And you could also have very, individual instructors who want to be very inclusive and want to include AI tools. So we encourage instructors to take a look at a couple different uses of AI, potential uses of AI in the classroom, and decide which of these uses are you okay with. And in their own syllabus, then indicate what uses are acceptable and what uses are not acceptable. Because you're absolutely right, you could include properly cited AI material. I would, of course, add some caution in there given the hallucinations. And so you may want to include an extra source, for example, beyond your AI generated passage, if you were allowing that in, say, an essay or something.
Yeah, I think it seems to be adding an air of legitimacy when it's not quite the case, with generative AI. So it's just weird. Thank
And
you.
I think that's really the challenge, because you do have some instructors that want to forge ahead and use it in their classes with students and teach students how to use it. But then you also have the other end of the spectrum where faculty just want to ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, and if you even touch it, it's, you fail the class. So trying to span that margin, it is a tough call. So with Waubonsie, I think we're in the same boat as Laura there, where we're trying to make everyone happy. And in a recent meeting, it was brought up, well, isn't that going to be confusing for students if each instructor has their own policy? And my response was, yes, it is going to be a bit confusing for students, but that's how we're going to explore this moving forward. We have to give faculty the ability to see what can be done with it. And I think the fear that I have with a college-wide integrity policy that includes AI or bans AI is that in the future, when more people are using it, when this does become similar to the internet or calculators, or whatever the analogy you want to use is, I don't want to have a policy that is then still limiting students from being comfortable using it, or you have some students that are using it and getting away with it and increasing an equity issue that we could do better about. So I think with these policies, whatever the policy is, you need to have a system in place to update that if necessary and quickly.
Can I ask another question? And I don't mean to dominate, but I just was thinking about, the previous comment that the generative AI tool would own whatever is input into it in that particular online curriculum system. And then the students would be using it to generate original, quote unquote, products. So is it going to get into this weird loop where the generative AI is critiquing the generative AI? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I don't know. How is that going to play out, and what is that going to mean for the information?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why my colleague in philosophy calls it the death of human thought. It's just going to be machines yakking at each other.
Yeah. So we can just kind of step back and watch the machines duke it out to see who has the highest quality inputs and outputs. Okay.
And I think the key there is, as Laura said before, focusing on that critical thinking. And whether we beat the machines out or not, it's going to come down to, are we encouraging and growing that critical thinking abilities in our students? Because that's the only thing that's going to save us. I recently read about Finland and how they consistently score so high in their education. And it's because they're needing to teach their students to discern true information from false information because of their border with Russia and all the propaganda that goes out there. So if we take play from their playbook on encouraging that critical thinking in our students, I think that is the way forward.
And apologies to Finland, I totally misspelled your name, Finlamnid. But they've got an Elements of AI free online course that the Finnish government has put out, freely available for everyone to use in a variety of different languages. That's really good.
Let me just touch back then on the AI policy question. So we see Donovan and Laura in particular show that their institutions added AI in, but has anybody looked at your academic integrity policy and felt like AI was more or less already addressed in what was there? Or are you aware of anybody that's taken that approach?
I can tell you that we are in the process of revamping ours, and we have a draft copy that's going to the board, soon. You know how processes are. We had a 2-sentence plagiarism policy in our our board policy. And we looked at it, and at the request of the faculty, the Student Services Committee looked at it and said, well, 2 sentences doesn't really address the world we live in anymore. I mean, it was very basic, like, you shouldn't turn in someone's work as your own. That's cheating. And so we kind of went to the drawing board, and I was on the committee that did this, and I can show you the draft that's going to our board. And it's kind of extensive and does address AI for the entire institution. So we broke it down into sections. We define principles here. What is AI? What is academic work? Cheating, fabrication, facilitating academic dishonesty, and plagiarism. So that we know what we're talking about and there are no questions there. And then we addressed things by principles. And the principles we pulled out were integrity, to uphold academic integrity, fairness, responsibility, transparency, which I think is a really important one when we've been talking about faculty using generative AI and the idea of citing AI, that if we're transparent with it, we can teach. We can teach how to use it. And then accountability that involves like information literacy, that there's personal responsibility for understanding whether or not what you've submitted is right or true or made up by AI. And then we have permissible and prohibited uses. And they're not extremely specific, but they're specific enough so as to show us some good examples. So it's okay to use it for research, as long as that is clearly disclosed and cited, and that it should enhance research without compromising research. You might call that a brainstorming tool, or a guided learning. Learning enhancement using AI-driven technology, but you have to ensure that it aligns with course objectives and provides value. And then for accessibility, we wanted to make sure that the idea of using AI tools to increase accessibility for our students was stated as an acceptable use, that we can use that to do speech to text. We can use it to generate things that will make it easier for students to understand what's going on. And then we prohibit plagiarism and cheating, any disadvantage given by AI. The thing that I'm still weird about is the consequences. They're quite general. What I do appreciate is that students are advised to contact their instructor for clarification on how the policy relates to their course prior to submission of course assessment. And so we have a disciplinary policy that we can use, the same as any academic or behavioral infractions, but it's very principle focused, rather than any specifically prescribed uses or things like that. And this is what we're taking up the chain. And I don't know, I'd be curious how people feel about that. It is being addressed. It is 2 pages instead of 2 sentences. But that's what we're doing right now.
I think the important thing is to be having these conversations on campus so that people are aware of the uses and the potential issues. Yes, and at Waubonsie, we have typically relied on our integrity statement and plagiarism statement. And I think as more and more time has gone by and it's clear that this isn't just going to go away, faculty are now looking at creating a statement for AI integrity and adding that, or revising some of these other statements and specifically calling out AI. So far, we haven't looked at anything as in-depth as what we've just seen here, but I think that's great. As I said, I also kind of worry about how much the shoot or the page is going to flip where faculty say, okay, students can't use it, but then as some of these tools that Donovan mentioned become more mainstream and widespread, how many faculty are going to start to use this? And then are we being hypocrites by telling students they can't use it, but yet, the English instructor is just going through and using what AI grades and recommends. So that's a consideration as well.
I think another consideration on top of what you just said, Justin, beyond being hypocritical, is, to what degree are we preparing them for the future if we tell them that they are not allowed to use it and we don't help them to learn how to use it properly and in an ethical way. I cannot remember the statistic. I'm guessing someone else out here, might know it, but it is a majority of companies, larger companies, want employees who are familiar with AI and can use it on their job. And so I do feel that we're doing a disservice if we just say, absolutely no AI, we're not going to tell you anything about it, just don't touch it, don't use it, pretend it doesn't exist. Beyond just being potentially hypocritical as faculty start to use the products more.
So let me ask next, what should institutions keep in mind, what principles, ideas, thoughts, as they address academic integrity policy changes due to AI? And then I just want to add to it also, if you have thoughts on it, but just for faculty and their specific courses, maybe separate from an institutional policy, ideas that they should keep in mind for their course specific AI policies.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in with a comparison that I used to make to my class. I'm one of the digital cusp generation, right? I was born without the internet, but by the time I got to grad school, everything was on the internet. So I explained to them how I had to do research in high school and in undergrad using a card catalog and the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature. If you can remember what that is, you are of a certain age. And then, that would take hours and hours and hours. But then by the time I got to grad school, when we have research databases and I no longer have to pull issues off of the shelf and go to the photocopier, right? The research time got cut down. Now with artificial intelligence that does actually cite its sources. I know Bing does that occasionally, but there's one that's a little bit better that I like to use called Perplexity. It will basically become a research tool, right? And so I remember that my instructors in undergrad were telling, or in grad school were telling me, don't Google things for research, right? Don't use Wikipedia. But now, you can actually find some pretty good information Googling things, and Wikipedia does contain links to other good, reputable sources. So I no longer, I don't pass that on, right? I don't tell my students not to use Wikipedia. I explain how to appropriately use it. So I think that's the one thing that regardless of what discipline we're in, we're going to have to get used to artificial intelligence as the next step in research databases, basically. We won't be plugging into Academic Search Elite. We'll go to something like Perplexity, ask it the research question, and it will spit out a list of sources that are probably more applicable to our research than we could find just going through a list of 100 results from a database by plugging in keywords. So I think it's going to be beneficial, and we just have to keep in mind that there's a line between using it as a research tool and having it actually compose the piece of writing or the argument or the project or whatever for you.
Yeah, I think that falls under ethical and responsible use, right? That it's going to be a tool that people are going to need to know how to use. And you can use it. Absolutely, you can use it in an ethical way. And students we all, by the way, I think, need help to understand, what is going to be appropriate and what is not going to be appropriate. And I also think that those norms are going to change over time as it gets embedded into more and more of our everyday tools that we're using. So, for example, one of the issues that I've run into personally in my classes would be students using Grammarly and the upgraded version of Grammarly. And right now, my policy is if you would like to use Grammarly for just grammar and spelling, fantastic. If you would like to use Grammarly to identify awkward phrasing, fantastic. But if you want to use Grammarly to upload your paper and have it spit back a new version of the paper, that's not okay. And I don't know. I don't know where am I going to be on that question in 5 years? Is this going to be a direction that most writing is going to be going? Path that most writing will be going down? I don't know. I think that we need to recognize that norms are going to change as well.
And I just want to make sure that everyone has access to the same tools. And I think that's why we're probably having this conversation to begin with, because for a long time, it was only students that had some extra money that would pay for Grammarly and use that. And then with OpenAI and ChatGPT, that's free to everyone right now. So that's nice in the sense that there's not an equity issue, but based on the type of policy that an institution adopts, you don't know if you are creating an equity gap there. And I think of it similarly as with a lot of instructors when COVID occurred and people went to, okay, well, take this exam online, but don't use your textbook. It's okay, well, so you've got a lot of honest students there that are getting poor exam scores, and then you have other students that are not honest and getting really great exam scores, and there wasn't a way to tell at that time. So I think it's that similar equity issue that we have to keep in mind, but also as these tools, who knows how long ChatGPT is going to be free for. And as soon as they put a price tag on that, then we have an equity issue that needs to be addressed.
All right, let me ask next question. How can AI be leveraged to teach students about the importance of academic integrity?
I used it when it first came out, when it was very hallucination prone, to demonstrate the difference between students sitting down and thinking about a piece of text for a couple of minutes and the machine just sort of spitting out the answer. We were doing an analysis of Roosevelt's Pearl Harbor Address to the Nation for inductive and deductive logic. It's a really easy speech. The induction and deduction is really easy to get. The AI could not adequately analyze inductive reasoning. And the students in the classroom were able to get it in about 3 minutes. And so they realized that they could do things that the AI couldn't do. And I didn't really get too many concerning submissions in that semester.
I do wonder how long that is going to be the status quo. As we're moving up in versions, I've done the same thing where you have students find the bot essentially, or find the error with what the AI is producing, and that is I think going to become a lot more difficult as we move forward. Jeff, this was the one question I had a hard time coming up with an answer for. I do think that you could come up with some pretty decent prompts to have AI help you to create an interactive educational module. You could have AI help you to create exercises, custom learning experiences. So I mean, that would be a possibility. You now can create the personalized ChatGPT models. Perhaps you could create one based on academic integrity that walks you through different scenarios and is a personalized learning type of module. And it might fit very well for an online course.
Well, I think you have a lot of publishers that are coming out with AI tools that help coach the student, but are programmed not to release the answer. But even using it to, like in biology, to come up with practice questions that the students can reflect on, or improve some answers to study guide questions just to help the students studying the material. I think there's a lot of benefit there. just to deepen the students' understanding of the material, or help come up with other ideas on ways to study the material, like I think Laura was saying. I think that's helpful. I use a program called Packback for my discussion boards, and that allows my students to see feedback before they even submit the answer, so that students can get a sense of, did they write enough? Do they need to explain more? Is their grammar needing to be addressed? So I like that, because students get that feedback before they even submit the response. So as opposed to before, where I would go through and grade them with my rubric, now they have that information right in front of them in real time. And so much of teaching is about getting that feedback back to the student as fast as possible. So now we're really turning it on its head here, getting that even before it's submitted. 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible. So I think that's really beneficial. And then just to go back to the equity issue, I did want to mention, a lot of our students don't have someone at home that they can have, hey, read this essay, does this make sense? And now we have a product that can provide some feedback to them. So I think that does help with a lot of our students, where they're experiencing it's just them. But if you have someone else who's really social and has a bunch of friends and other resources that can help, or a parent at home, so even there are benefits to closing some of those issues.
All right, let me ask, we were discussing AI detectors earlier in this session, but there's research that suggests that AI detectors may be biased against non-native English writers. I'm wondering if this is something that you've had a discussion about at your institution, or in your work with in this area.
Oh yeah. Yes, they are biased against non-native English writers, but they are also biased against writers of non-standard English. Okay, so and then now let me preface this with the standard English teacher, standard English teacher statement about standard written English. There is no such thing as standard written English, right? There are a variety of different dialects of English, and one of them is labeled standard by a group that is in power. So while my speech register and writing register may, come off as sort of standard written English, Malcolm X's wouldn't, right? So if you feed your paper into an AI thing to help, to quote unquote help with grammar, to make you sound more like standard written English, it's going to get tagged, right? And it's part of the problem of artificial intelligence is that it does produce this average text, right? It tries to level things out. It tries to make everything in one register of standard written English, because it's following a set of grammatical rules, and it does not know that these grammatical rules are not rhetorically based, right? And so a rule that might apply for one audience, and they might think I'm speaking well if I use that rule, might not apply to another audience, right? When I go home to my relatives in Louisiana, I throw around "ain't got no" all the time, right? But I would not dare do that in front of my class. So the problem is that it's trying to make everything standardized when there really is no such thing as a standard written English. There's the written English of white middle class people, right? And so the big part of our discussion has been about the ideological component of artificial intelligence. It's in a linguistic sense, it's making that standard written English, and so it produces a lot of flat snooze-inducing text, in my opinion. And in the same way, because it's depending on what's the next most likely thing to be said, it's also producing a sort of uniformity and flatness of thought, right? So if you ask artificial intelligence, how can we overcome economic inequality? It probably is not going to say overthrow capitalism.
This has been something, not exactly what you said, but this has also been something that we've been concerned about at Moraine. We do have a lot of ESL students at Moraine. And so it's very important that instructors understand that their writing is more likely to get tagged. In addition, neurodivergent writers writing is more likely to get tagged as well. So people on the spectrum are, for example, more likely to have their writing tagged as AI produced than people who are not on the spectrum. And that's another concern and something else that people have to keep in mind when they're using these tools.
At Waubonsie, we have not yet started this discussion. So it's great to see that other people are and they're aware of it and making this more of a conversation to have on campus. So I'm excited to have these conversations and help other faculty be aware of the challenges that we are facing.
We're in about the same position as you, Justin. We haven't really engaged a lot with this question. We've engaged around it. You know, I mean, we have the old using Google Translate things. We have, you know, all sorts of things that do affect our different populations of students and our tools or vices or however you want to see them. We've also been looking at how to use technology and tools to help overcome gaps that already exist for non-native speakers. You know, are there plugins in our LMS that can translate some of the text so that it's more accessible or things like that? And so we've been approaching from a different angle, but not from the angle of bias. So I'm really glad to hear that discussion and to include that as we move forward.
All right. Are there any subjects, topics in this area that we haven't discussed yet today that you as the panel feel like we need to bring forward?
Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate the idea from earlier about the ways in which our work and our labor as instructors might be being used either by artificial intelligence or to train artificial intelligence with not without our knowledge, but maybe sometimes with our begrudging consent, right? If we work at an institution that requires us to use a learning management system, as many of us do, and the learning management system that our institution has an agreement with can do whatever it wants with our data, we're in kind of a Wild West frontier here, right? That we're not really sure on our end what is being done with our output, and that is going to be a problem for not immediately, right? I don't think, but in the next couple of decades, that's going to be a problem for the labor market. I mean, if you no longer have to hire someone to teach a composition class, but you can just keep using the AI to give you feedback on your sentence phrasing and stuff like this, well, then there's no more need for composition instructors, right? And this is going to hit fields the way that AI is going to affect labor. I don't think we've really fully appreciated this yet, because if you want to make a commercial, right, regular old television commercial, you can have an AI write the script and AI write the music and AI do, you know, the illustrations that you can then feed into an AI and do the animation. And what previously required lighting and camera and screenwriters and grips and makeup artists and all this other stuff can be done by one person engineering a prompt, right? And so I don't think we're fully prepared yet for the way in which artificial intelligence is going to impact our labor market. And that's one of the other things that I think we need to prepare students for, right? Their employers are going to want them to be able to use artificial intelligence, because if they can use artificial intelligence, that's fewer people that their employer has to hire, right? So we're going to be training our students for an ever shrinking number of jobs. That's my big fear about AI.
Well, and I had that fear as soon as COVID happened and all my lecture videos were online. So as soon as that happened, I'm like, okay, I think they still think they need me here. And you know, and yeah, so being very concerned about that. And I'm trying to get ahead of the curve so that if my job gets replaced, hopefully I can manage. Maybe it's not the 4 sections of classes that I'm managing, but maybe it's 10 or 20 with the assistance of AI now. So I would encourage faculty to explore these tools, find out what works and what works with you, so that when the machines take over, you're on the right side. No.
We do have one question in the chat, and we're getting close to the end, but I'll just let everybody know. We'll move into what questions our participants have, but we do have one in the chat that is Karen asks, has your institution encountered situations where a student was accused of an AI-related academic integrity violation and they strongly denied using it? How did the institution handle that?
I just met with a representative of our conduct board last week and heard that this situation has happened, and it was investigated, and based on the evidence that was presented, it was agreed that the student had used AI tools to plagiarize work, and so the student was brought up and had to go through the process there, which usually for us is meeting with a representative and going through and talking about the issue in a couple sessions. And then I'm not sure if it went beyond that.
We've had situations in individual classes. We've been, without an institutional policy on AI, so most of it's been handled by individual instructors. In the conversations that I've had, generally a quick turnaround resubmit is what the instructors are asking for when they're challenged about it. If there's a really insistent student, I didn't do it, fine. Here, start fresh, show me, or come in and meet with me and we'll talk through it to make sure that you understand it. It's been kind of hit and miss. It happens most, of course, in composition, and then in history, it's happening a lot. So, I mean, I guess the humanities, those writing requirements in humanities really get us. So that's how we've been dealing with it, case by case.
Are there any? Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead.
In Canvas, there is a feature that you can see what students are typing in a text box. So I can go in and see, okay, at minute 1, this is what the student wrote. At minute 105, this is what the student wrote, and have a record of what the student was typing. So I can see if the student is typing that information or just copying and pasting the information in. And I think tools like that may become more common, so that it is clear what the student did, how they arrived. So more than just, okay, this was my first draft, this was my second draft. Here you can see I typed it all here over the course of however long. And I'm curious from the English instructors out there, if that seems like they're going to move in that direction where more of the writing is not just on your own time, but all right, you have an hour, we're going to use Respondus to record your webcam while you're in front of the computer. So I think there's a lot to be explored there. We'll see if people like that or not.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot more in-class writing stuff, right? Pencil and paper for everybody, or pen and paper. And then they take a picture of it, upload it into D2L, and then if the typewritten version that, that handwritten rough draft or that handwritten brainstorm is way different from the typewritten version, I know I've got a sort of something to look at, right? But more importantly, the students who are sitting down writing with a pen for these initial brainstorming techniques, I tell them, ChatGPT can do some miraculous things, but it cannot use a pen. And so they know that's why I'm doing it, right? And it kind of keeps them at bay, I think is a good way to describe it.
Are there any other questions from our participants for the panel? Well, if not, we will start to wrap up the session. We're about time anyway. I'd like to thank our panelists. Everybody give them a round of applause or thanks in the chat with the text or reaction. I just want to say I appreciate the discussion today. I thought this was a really great discussion, and I hope everybody who participated found that valuable. I will let everybody know that we will send out a conference evaluation following the conference. That'll go out either later today or tomorrow, so you can be on the lookout for that. This concludes this year's conference. I want to thank everyone who participated in the conference, our presenters, our moderators, and our attendees. I hope you enjoyed it. I found this year's conference particularly good and certainly a timely topic. Recordings of these presentations and handouts will be available at the conference site after the conference. It might take a couple of weeks, so you'll have to give us a little time, but we'll have that up. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Jeff Newell, and you can email me at jeff.newell@illinois.gov. All right, the website's ilco.net if you'd like to learn more about ILCO. All right, with that, thank you again to the panel, and thank you to the participants here in this session and everybody who attended the conference. Thank you very much, and that's it. We will see you another time.